Hello, I'm Alex, and I'm going to be going through some AutomateDV questions today. One particular question, which has been on the backlog for a while and has someone very patiently waiting for me to answer it. Thank you for that. I'll be answering that today. So I'll kick off with that first one. So we had a question a while back. On staging strategy for multi-table sources. So the question was, so what is the best practice for staging when components of a single business key are spread across multiple tables within the same source system? So for example, if orders has the primary transaction data, but the customer master table contains the required part of the business key, should I create a staging view that joins these tables? If so, how do I handle this without violating the unaltered source principle? Is the goal to present a unified logical record for the raw vault loader while maintaining clear lineage back to the original table? It's a very good question. It's quite a common question in the data vault space, and there are people on both sides of the debate. I will give my personal outlook on this, but there's quite a lot of other opinions out there, and I'll try to summarize those. So the first thing I will say is, let's define what we mean by unaltered source. So what we generally mean by that is not applying business rules, business logic, so not transforming the data in any, not changing the semantic meaning. So hard rules are okay. We might, might change some names of columns. We might do some very minor cleansing, so maybe doing some trimming and things like that, but basically no changes to the actual meaning of the data as far as as much as we can. So yeah, not cleansing or standardizing values, no changes of grain, don't do any aggregations, all that kind of stuff. Those are soft rules. Those are left for the business vault, maybe the presentation layer if we can. So it doesn't mean no joins, no views, no deriving any logic. Well, in AutomateDV we have the derived columns, so that kind of thing is fine. Anything you can do with derived columns, as long as you're not applying any significant transformations, is fine. It doesn't mean no joining, basically. So my personal opinion is, if you've got keys spread over multiple tables and you need those to create your business key for your hub or your link or whatever, then joining them very loosely in the raw vault to get those keys, or in the staging area to get those keys, absolutely fine. Some people say that this removes the kind of passive integration that you might be able to get without doing that. And the alternative is moving the joining logic to the business vault. And I think all that does is really kind of defer the inevitable of having to join them together at some point to get those keys anyway. So I think it's much better to join early and get those keys out early and have a kind of free flow into the raw vault than deferring until later. So just to talk around some of the issues where joining is a problem. If you're going to be joining to kind of filter out any data, enrich any data, start to do standardizing, replacing any codes, maybe doing this kind of logic you do in the same as link to say, these codes map to these codes between subsystem, that is then you're going too far down the joining route. If your joining is limited to purely bringing some data together to make sure the keys are all in the same table, that, in my opinion, is fine. We do this where necessary. We avoid it where we can, because it does add complexity to the raw, to the staging area, where you do want to try and keep it as simple as possible. So if it can be avoided, always do. But if it's a necessity, do it where you need to. I think that's mostly all I need to say on that one. Generally speaking, the lineage, just to go back to the question, the lineage shouldn't be destroyed in this case because you're doing it in a limited way. The goal is still, the bit about the question is the goal to present a unified logical record for the raw vault load while maintaining clear lineage back to the original tables. Yes, that is the goal. I don't think this takes away from that goal at all. So let's clarify with an example. You might fine for in some cases where you have a customer ID in some tables that's a system generated ID. So for example, UUID, or you might have a sequence number like 1234 or 1235. That keeps increasing. That doesn't really mean anything. It's system generated. It works as a unique identifier, but it doesn't mean anything in and of itself. Some tables, some system, from other systems, might have an email address as a unique identifier, and you might want that consistency and that nice to have of a, say, for example, a more meaningful, legible ID for a customer. Now, email address is a bad example just because of PII, things like that, but let's go with it. Now, you might want something like that. So in order to get that email address as the consistent key, you might want to join those tables together to associate the email address from one source system to the customer ID from another source system. And that's not inherently changing anything in the data. You're not changing any semantic meaning. You're just associating some data with other data, and slightly restructuring so that you can create your ideal hubs, links, and satellites around that central customer key. So the important thing to remember is, data vault models business keys at their transactional grain, their true transactional grain, not at their physical table boundary. So just because you've got 4 tables doesn't mean you should stage those 4 tables separately and keep them separate. It might be that those 3 or 4 tables together form the full business concept of, for in this case, customer. So joining them makes sense at that level, as long as you, again, aren't changing anything semantically. And I think that's everything. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that answers the question. If not, please leave something in the comments on that one.